All right, let's jump right into this explainer and uncover what is arguably the most visually jarring, radical 10 years in ancient Egypt's incredible 3,000-year history. When we think of ancient Egypt, we usually picture this incredibly stable, deeply traditional culture that just did not want to change. But for one brief, explosive decade known as the Amarna Period, absolutely everything, politics, religion, the economy, and especially the art, was turned completely upside down overnight. We're going to explore this rapid revolution and find out exactly why it resulted in some of the most bizarre and awkward art the ancient world had ever seen. To really get how crazy this shift was, we have to look at the baseline. For 2,000 years, Egyptian artisans followed a strict, totally unchanging set of rules that made their statues rigid, symmetrical, and completely flawless. So it brings up a massive question. Why did this art suddenly start to look almost like alien mutants? Well, it all starts with the man behind the revolution, Pharaoh Akhenaten. Just picture his famous bust. We're talking about an elongated skull, incredibly strange, exaggerated facial features, and this razor-sharp, pointed chin. It is a shocking and totally deliberate departure from millennia of flawless tradition. Before him, pharaohs were these idealized, perfect specimens. But Akhenaten, he actually demanded to be depicted in this highly stylized, almost distorted way. Now, to understand the weird art, we've got to understand his motives. Before he was Akhenaten, he was Amenhotep IV, and he had a massive political problem on his hands. Under the old system, the real power was heavily concentrated in the capital of Thebes, controlled by the wildly wealthy priests of the god Amun. These guys had so much land and resources that they were actually threatening the pharaoh's own authority. So what does he do? He initiates a ruthless political purge disguised as religious reform, shifting all that power away from Thebes to his brand new purpose-built desert capital called Amarna. He didn't just move the capital, though. He completely restructured the cosmos. He shut down the old temples, stripped the priests of their wealth, and gave it all directly to the crown. Out with the old gods, in with a strict monotheistic worship of the sun disk, the Aten. But here's the real kicker. He made himself the exclusive middleman. He declared that only he knew the will of the Aten, essentially making himself both a living god and pope. He completely cut out the priesthood and forced everyone to look solely to him for any kind of divine connection. So here is where it gets really intense for the everyday person, especially the artists. You really have to put yourself in their shoes. In ancient Egypt, art wasn't just pretty decoration you'd hang on a wall, it was literal magic. The images carved into tombs guaranteed your eternal life and maintained Ma'at, the cosmic order of the entire universe. Changing those rules wasn't just a quirky artistic choice. To these craftsmen, altering sacred proportions was a terrifying, blasphemous act that could literally cost them their own souls. Imagine the sheer psychological terror they felt. They were suddenly ordered to abandon the gods they'd known forever and sculpt their pharaoh with a bulging belly, these wide, almost feminine hips, and spindly little arms. For master craftsmen who had spent their whole lives perfectly executing the sacred rules of the old gods, this was deeply traumatic. They were constantly terrified that by drawing the pharaoh wrong, they might suffer a divine curse. The psychological pressure must have been absolutely crushing. Adding to all that psychological fear was a massive, literal, technical hurdle. For centuries, Egyptian art relied on a foolproof 18-grid system that guaranteed perfect, unchanging proportions. But Akhenaten abruptly forces them to ditch it for a brand new 20-grid system, and this changed everything. It lowered the center of gravity and forced artists to stretch the neck and head. Basically, the deeply ingrained muscle memory of these master sculptors was rendered completely useless overnight. So what we have here is basically a recipe for an anatomical disaster. You've got the urgent construction of a new capital in the middle of a barren desert, which Akhenaten demanded be finished in just a few short years. Because of this frantic rush, these terrified artisans had zero time to master that complex new 20-grid system. And worse, everything was happening so fast that there was a complete lack of a standardized aesthetic. They had radical new rules, but no unified visual guide on how to actually make it look anatomically coherent. And the results of that chaos are just wild. When you look at the carvings of Akhenaten and his family bathing under the sun disk, you see artists being forced to stretch bodies to fit a new grid without understanding how human anatomy actually scales. They produce these masses of awkward figures with spindly, spider-like limbs, swooping alien skulls, and oddly sagging bellies. The artists were quite literally guessing how to connect the dots on a grid they didn't fully comprehend, all while rushing to finish an entire city. Which brings us to a really profound historical truth. As the quote perfectly captures, the awkwardness of Amarna art reveals the absolute limits of a hasty revolution. You can centralize political power or change a state religion overnight, sure, but you absolutely cannot instantly rewrite thousands of years of artisan muscle memory, and you definitely can't erase deep-seated religious fear. The human element just couldn't keep up with the pharaoh's rushed vision. But here's where the story takes a massive turn. The very second Akhenaten dies and his son, the famous Tutankhamun, takes the throne, the whole experiment is over. The radical Amarna legacy was instantly discarded. The old guard stepped right back in, moved the capital back to Thebes, and reinstated the old gods and the 18-grid system. And they didn't just reverse his policies. Later pharaohs went completely out of their way to systematically smash the city of Amarna and obliterate its art, absolutely desperate to erase this heretical decade from history forever. But here is the ultimate, magnificent historical irony. Seriously, it's incredible. Because these clumsy, bizarre artworks were intentionally smashed, toppled over, and buried deep in the desert sand to be forgotten forever, they were actually saved. The sheer weight of the sand perfectly protected these artifacts from time, weather, and later human settlements. So, ironically, the very act of trying to destroy this stuff is exactly what preserved its most intimate, awkward details for us to dig up thousands of years later, giving us a vivid window into the most radical 10 years in Egyptian history. So, it leaves us with this crazy final question for this explainer. The attempt to wipe Akhenaten from the face of the earth spectacularly backfired. By trying so hard to completely erase this failed, strange revolution, did his enemies actually ensure that we could see its story perfectly preserved today? It is a powerful reminder that history has a profound sense of irony. Thanks for diving into this with me, and keep questioning the history you think you know.